All right. Well, here we are with Joni Louie, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. And we're starting this interview today, a journey with HR professionals. I'm Pamela Spencer. I'm recently graduated with my master's in HR from UTA.
Awesome.
Um, and Joni, I'll hand it over to you if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I currently work at a public accounting firm called Whitley Penn, and I am on the HR team. And I actually had a very different journey into HR. Didn't get a master's, but I actually started out in fine arts and originally from Canada. So moved to the U.S. and kind of made a career change into the HR field, and it's been a pleasure to kind of work within the field. And I think during COVID, especially, really get to experience and get to learn and get to see a lot of different things happening. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And with that, we'll go ahead and move into the first question, which actually you kind of already started
Yeah.
talking about. So how and where did you get your start in HR?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So coming from the arts, living in Toronto, very different city, and then coming here was also just a very different culture. And so I kind of spent my time trying to figure out, what it was that I wanted to do. So it kind of in the interim, I worked a lot of kind of office manager, executive assistant roles. And each time I ended up kind of supporting, you know, the HR aspects of the job, or, just really small companies that didn't have an HR team. So I kind of had to step up on those tasks. So really where I got my first exposure was with an entertainment company called Encore Live in Fort Worth. I actually directly supported the VP of HR, and that's how that journey started. And then from there, because I didn't have a master's or anything in HR or anything like that, it was kind of a little tougher to get into. I think there's a lot of specific requirements that you need to get in the field. So the first thing I did and what I read in my research is, being a recruiter is kind of one of the best ways in. And so that's kind of what I ended up doing. I joined a medical company called Physicist that eventually became Scribe America, and I recruited for them for a little bit. And so I ended up at Whitley Penn here as kind of the ending of that, and obviously continuing my journey.
Wow, that's amazing. So how long have you been in the field?
Um, Altogether, I would say it's really honestly not been that long, but I'd say kind of combining everything, it's probably been about 3 to 4 years, I'd say.
Okay. And most of it has been with Whitley Penn?
They were kind of spread out. I've had some unfortunate incidents. Whitley Penn I've been with about a year and a half. The prior companies was with had a bunch of layoffs and downsizing and reorging, and I unfortunately got part of that, so I didn't get to stay with those companies.
That's unfortunate, but glad to have
Yeah.
you. So let's move on to the next question. What do you find most challenging about the HR field?
Yeah, that's also a good one. I think there's a lot of things. At least from my experience, I think, for a lot of us, and especially for me, I got into HR because I want to help support people and support the employees. I'm an employee. I've been an employee. I know what it feels like to be an employee. And I think that now being in an HR role, it's finding a balance between supporting those people, but also supporting the company and the leaders and what they want. I think that is one of the biggest struggles. And then, I think especially right now, the ever-changing laws and policies that are, based on what political, economic, or any, crisis that we're having, I think keeping up with those is also, somewhat difficult. And then lastly, this kind of ties in with my first point, but I think, HR sometimes has a bad rep of being the people that deliver the bad news, is what people's perception of us are. And as a result, I think that people don't necessarily respect that department. And so, a struggle is people trying to kind of go around us when they need to come through us. I think, that's a big one. So you're not in your head. It feels like,
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, I think you touched on some points that can lead us to the next question.
Sure.
How do you stay on top of trends and changes in HR?
Yeah, I think, so many different things. I love that even though we are in a virtual world, I can still attend all these seminars and conferences and virtual events. And kind of with that, being able to hear, not only just what the trends are, but like seeing other people from other companies, from other cities and states come together. And it's nice to see that everyone kind of has the same issues. And also being able to learn that together is really helpful. So I try to go to as many as I can. Fort Worth HR has obviously been amazing. I try to attend those as much, but it's been great. I get a lot of emails from random companies that, reach out to me for things, and they're always like, oh, well, you're not interested in our services, but we've got a conference. So I'm like, great. I think Latisse just had one and Trevor Noah was on it. So that's been great. And then I think, the being a SURE member has been pretty great too. I love going to the, questions and keeping up with the latest news and kind of, any guidelines or information that they have on that. I like to read through those, especially when I encounter problems.
Yeah, makes sense. I get emails like every day, at least once.
Yeah,
About what's going on.
for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll go ahead and move on to our last question, which is, what advice would you give to someone wanting to break into the HR profession?
Yeah, I feel like that's a perfect question for me because I kind of tried my best to break into it. I think just doing your research, one thing that I found, certifications are obviously very important. I think having either your SHRM or your PHR is a game changer. And so working on that as soon as you can, I think is definitely helpful. But sometimes kind of like the path that I took, and it's the path that I hear a lot of people take, is, oh yeah, you kind of have to work in talent acquisition or recruiting first to kind of break in. So that's definitely a possible way to get in there. But I would say, I think most importantly, determine what areas of HR you want to work in. I think some people want to be a generalist, some people want to be in talent acquisition specifically, or employee relations. I've gotten that question asked a lot from me when I was interviewing, for an HR position. Well, what interests you? Like, why? And I think, determining that is an important part. And I think it also shows that you kind of know what you want, and also understanding that, there's so many facets of HR, and kind of they all, while based on, policies and procedures and things like that, all require different strengths, and they all operate differently. And I think looking at yourself, what your skill set is, what your strengths are, what is your goal, what do you hope to achieve, and kind of look at that through those different facets is going to help you kind of narrow down what it is exactly that you want to do in the HR profession. So,
okay. Makes sense. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And that is all the questions that I had for you today. Again, I want to thank you for sharing with us a little bit about your journey into HR.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. All right.